Hello again. So let's get started by talking about the different tools and materials that we're going to be using for our project called Beyond the Hoop Landscapes. Okay, first of all, you're going to need a regular pair of scissors. Any kind will do. We're going to be using these to cut thread and yarn. Just always make sure that you're really safe with your scissors. Next, we're going to be using something called a crochet hook. And we use this to manipulate yarn or thread or string. And it's called a hook because you can see right here, there's a little hook right there. This could be your first introduction to a crochet hook, and you're going to be so excited about the kind of things that you can make with that. Look at just an ordinary toothpick. We're going to be using this as a felting tool. Instead of buying one of the needles that are really, really sharp, I have figured out a way to use a regular toothpick. Next, you might recognize this. This is a needle that we will use for sewing. And what's so great about this needle is it's got this great big eye. It's called the eye of the needle. And you can put a fairly thick piece of yarn in that. It's sturdy, it gets the job done, and it's very safe. So it's perfect for what we're going to be working on today. We're also going to be using a couple of regular clothespins. Stay tuned for how those are going to be used. And lastly, for our tools, we're going to be using this. It's called an embroider hoop. And what's so great about this is it's made of wood. They also have metal ones, but I like natural materials. As you can see, it just slips. One hoop slips right over the top of the other one. And what's so great about this is it's adjustable. So you can have it be as tight or as loose as you want, depending on what kind of textiles you're using. And this is also going to be a frame for our fabulous project. So as it's used as a tool, we're going to be going like this with our clothespins so we can hold this up to work. So that kind of gives us a little bit more freedom with what we're going to be working on with our project. So spoiler alert, I already showed you what those clothespins can do. Okay, now let's talk about materials. This is called variegated yarn. And what's so great about this is you can buy one skein of yarn. This is called a skein, and this is how you purchase your yarn in one bundle. And what's so great about this is it's called variegated because it's got varied colors all on one skein of yarn. So we can get a lot of dimension with our landscape just by using this one kind. But we're not going to be stopping with just one kind of yarn. We're also going to use some beautiful polyester thread, another type of yarn which is really great because it goes from thin to thick, and that's because of the way that it's spun. And that is going to be great for our project too, because we want a lot of dimension and texture with our landscape. This is a great yarn. This is made from cotton. It's very smooth. This would be something that you would use if you were creating something for a baby, something really smooth and soft. Next, we have some wool yarn. Now, this is a great, great piece of yarn. You can see the way it's spun. It's got all of those different strands in it, and I love the colors. This was created in our town. I got this from Green Bow Farm. This is another yarn that we're going to be using, man-made, very smooth, very soft. You could make a blanket, a hat, a scarf with that. This is one more kind of man-made yarn that we're going to be talking about. And you can see that the way it's spun, it's got several strands that are spun together. And what I like about this is that you can take it apart. So you're going to be making all of these decisions with your project, and we have a lot of choices. And lastly, I've got this beautiful wool right here. So what I like about this, it reminds me of a fluffy cloud. And we can do a lot with this. I like to dye this also with materials that I could find in my kitchen cabinet, spice cabinet, or in my yard to turn this into different colors. So I can show you a little bit more about that later. So these are the items that we're going to be using, and gosh, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get started. We are going to be working on our first skill. Our first skill for this project is going to be creating a slip knot. This is a slip knot. It goes on our crochet hook. It's great for what we're working on because we can attach our yarn right on to our crochet hook, and it gives us some tension so that we can control the crochet hook and the yarn. So let's get started with that. This is why it's called a slip knot, folks. Ta-da! Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a loop with the tail. We wanna make sure that our tail is long enough so that we can take that, push it up through the loop, and put our crochet hook on there. So you can see that this slip knot can be loosened or tightened, just depending on what you need for your project. It's a really great way to be able to control your yarn. Okay, let's try that again. Now, just like anything else, this is going to take practice. Poof! Okay, take your yarn, create a loop. Here's your tail. Our tail needs to be long enough so that we can take it and push that tail up into our loop so that we can catch that yarn with the crochet hook. Ta-da! This is called a slip knot. And just so you know, I use a slip knot for a lot more than art projects. So I not only call it an art skill, I call it a life skill. Welcome back, artists. Okay, so we are going to work on our next step in our project, which is called the foundation chain. So I have my little skein of yarn. I'm using the green variegated. It's going to be great for our landscape project. So I have my slip knot on my crochet hook, and I am going to start with my foundation chain. So this is step one, how to hold your yarn. We want to make sure that we keep this loose enough that it's not going to get hung up on this hook or knot up. So we have to do something called creating tension. So this is how we're going to do that, tension with the yarn. Okay, so I'm going to take this, loop it around my finger and up around my pointer finger, and this is how I'm going to be able to control my yarn. A lot of people hold their yarn a lot different. You will maybe even discover your own way, but this works really well for beginners, and it's always worked well for me. So let's do that one more time. Creating tension with our yarn by looping it around our finger, going up around the other fingers and down. Okay, so I have it like this, and then I'm going to kind of hold this in between my finger and thumb and maybe make an adjustment with my slip knot so that it's loose enough to be able to slide and glide up and down my crochet hook so that it doesn't get caught up or make a knot. So I have my yarn like this. I have some good tension. I'm also going to grab onto my tail just for my first couple of stitches. So I'm going to do something called yarn over, and then I'm going to pull on my crochet hook and pull it through that loop. Yarn over, pull, and you may want to do a twisting motion when you're pulling it through that loop. I'm going to make a small adjustment by now hanging onto my chain a little bit closer here so that I can control it a little better. Yarn over, twist gently, and pull through. Yarn over, twist gently, and pull through. I also am pulling a little bit. As you can see, I'm pulling down on my chain, and also I'm pulling it on my crochet hook. So this could look a little complicated if you're a beginner, but everybody has to start somewhere, and this is a great way to start by working on an art project. So yarn over, pull through. Now, a lot of times when you're making a foundation chain and you're following a pattern, they will call for a certain amount of stitches. And I'm not going to do that. Instead of saying, I would like you to chain 100, I'm going to say, I would like you to chain about 5 feet. So you can see that I'm working with my yarn, constantly making adjustments so that it feels like this is going smoothly, and you will get the gist of this. Now, let's say for instance, I had a chain that I didn't like because I pulled it and it was kind of loopy and I didn't like the way it looked compared to all the rest of mine. I can pull out my crochet hook and just pull out a little bit of my foundation chain, and then just to continue working. So for the project that we're working on today, I don't want you to worry about the consistency of your chains very much, because we want a variety of stitches and textures in our project. So for those of us that are just learning how to do this, I want you to be kind to yourself and try not to be a perfectionist about it. Just have fun with the process. So I am going to make, like I said, about 5 feet of chain, and you would be surprised how fast this can go. So you see, I just lost my loop, picking it back up, and I'm going to continue with my chain. So you can see that this variegated yarn, ooh, this is going to look fabulous for our project. So you keep on crocheting, I'll keep on crocheting, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Good luck. would like to show you what to do when you reach the end of your chain after you've worked so hard and you want to tie that off so it doesn't come undone. You're just going to yarn over and pull that through like so. And that is going to create that knot for you. Oh, look, it's all this beautiful fiber. Okay, so that's knotted off, and I want to go ahead and show you what I'm doing next. I am going to take that stitching method that I showed you a little bit earlier, and I'm going to show you how I can gather this. I'm just going stitching up and then down. This would be called a running stitch if I was doing this on fabric. So I don't know if you can see that going through there. What I'm doing is I'm creating some mountains for my piece. So I just kind of want to show you how that worked. And then I will show you how I'm going to use that to create the mountain, like so. I might even add on a little bit up here. And then that is going to go on my horizon line. So this can be a mountain, a hill. That part is completely up to you. Oh, look at what we've got. I'm so excited. So I just kind of turned my hoop on its head, and I have it like this now, and I'm just going to show you a way that we're going to stitch this together just so that we can start creating our landscape and working on our whole composition at one time. So I'm taking my threaded needle and I'm just going to start pushing it through my chain stitch. Now if I want, I can go all the way down in there, pick up that netting. I don't know if you can see that very well. So I kind of picked up the netting. Okay. So just keep going till you get to the bottom of your work. And we're not even practicing weaving. We're just going to hold this together at this point. Oh, that looks pretty good. There we go. So just keep weaving like that until, well, I'm going to call it weaving. It's kind of a loose weaving. Just keep going up and down like that until you have your landscape, your horizon line set up. Okay? See you in a few minutes. Okay, now I'm going to take a few minutes to look at my composition. Because this is a landscape, I have horizontal composition going here, and I want to look at my format, which is the outside dimension of my work, and kind of see how I like that. I really like it so far because my eye is kind of drawn in here because I stitched these really close together, just with that technique that I showed you, or that skill. So I don't want to go any further on this right now. I am just going to cut my yarn, and remember, careful with the scissors. And I'm just going to clip that, and I'm leaving a tail on there because I can go ahead and weave that back in later with my crochet hook, or I can tie a knot and weave it, or I can just let it go, because this piece that we're working on and the style we're working in, it's got a lot of texture, And because all of these colors are flowing so well together, we don't have to worry about any detail right now. We're just worrying about the major part of our composition. And if you're having trouble with that, setting up your artwork, I just went outside and looked in my yard, or I looked at some pictures, or I'm sure you have some family photographs somewhere. So you could use those as your reference point. So um, here we go. I got my horizon line. So I'm going to be working a little bit more with some different colors, so stay tuned. I am continuing to attach my hills or mountains, whatever you want yours to be, above my meadow. And I'm just taking this, I can push all the way down through the netting and pull that into place. It just kind of depends on what your priority is. Do you want to stick it to the netting, or do you want to make those mountains a little bit taller? You decide. And you can always go ahead and chain stitch some more of this beautiful gray wool so that you could really make those mountains what you want them to be. Ooh, this is so exciting. This is where we're going to start using our felting technique. Normally, a needle felter has some really rough edges right here that are made of steel. I'm getting my wool a little wet. It does help if you add a little soap to this. I did not think that was a good idea for our kit because I didn't know if somebody might be allergic to it. So we're just going to use some water, and we're going to go ahead and continue felting with our wool. And try to remember when you're pulling this apart, be really gentle. I just kind of laid it on here and then start working. So, of course, at this point, this is your composition. I've got my sky, I've got my horizon line, and I am going to put a few flowers down here. So make sure that as you're working, you keep all of these things out to the side. This may look a little ragged at this point, but I'm going to show you how to fix that up so that it's coming off the hoop, excuse me. Okay, so it's so exciting. We're so close to being done and ready to work with some of our details for our piece. We are almost finished. I will add several things to your packet that you can explore some different things that you want to do with your wall hanging. So our landscape beyond the hoop is just that. It's beyond everything expected. I'm kind of making my own fiber by taking a piece of thread and rolling it with this wool. So I'm just kind of getting my fingers wet. My work area is getting a little bit crazy. I have strings everywhere and tools, but that's what it takes sometimes to get your job done. So just keep on going. Go further. I'm next going to put this on a needle so that I can sew this on my fabulous project. What I'm going to do is twist, twist, just the way I'm twisting everything else when I'm putting these fibers together. So I have a thread and some fiber, and I'm going to hope that that thread, it's very strong, so I'm hoping that that will stay together with my project. Here's my back. It looks a little crazy, but pretty excited about it. And here's the front. So I'm going to take this now. I've held it down a bit here with a straight stitch. I don't know if you can see that or not. And now I'm going to continue to just put a little bit of this through there to hold it down. So we are reaching the end of our foundation, getting ready for details. What I'm doing right now is sewing these chains right here to the netting in the back. So I'm going up through and then down, doing it on this side of the frame, closest to the center of the work, but I'm also going to go over the edge here for some of them. I want this to stay pretty stationary. I'm going to be hanging this somewhere. I thought a window would be nice. So that's what I'm doing, and when I get all done attaching it, I'm going to use dark colors for this, medium for this, the periwinkle for this, and a little bit of silver for that. Then we're going to be placing our detail down here, and we're almost finished. Oh, my landscape. Your landscape. Okay, I'm looking at my composition. I absolutely love it. I love looking at the sky, the blue sky, the land, and lastly, my detail right here of the flowers out in my yard. So I have kind of this wispy, I even have a big knot right here, pieces left over of fabric and yarn, or excuse me, textile, oh, whatever. Okay, so I am done with the sewing of my piece, and what I'm going to do is trim off some of this netting. I'm going to trim it off because I used it for stability, but I don't want to look at it anymore. I like the way my clouds are kind of hanging right here, but they are attached, as you can see, my fluffy clouds to the back of the netting. And I'm just going to leave that exactly the way it is. I've tied a few knots and done some clipping. Don't clip your tails too short. Okay, it's attached to the hoop. And now I'm going to finally trim off, if you can look at this up closely, I'm trimming off the netting. I know it's kind of hard because it is see-through. I just want to make sure that I don't get too close and start cutting off my flowers. But this netting is kind of stretchy, and I don't care if a little bit of it shows. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off on this side as well. If I wanted some of it to stay out, I could. I left fabric or textiles to the side if I wanted to get a wispy look about my landscape, because after all, remember, our landscape is off the hoop. So the only thing that I don't like about this, I like this knot, I like everything. This was a big braid, and I don't think I care for it anymore. So there you go. My sky is continuous. I love my composition. It's got a little focal point. Could almost have a focal point up here, and that means that it's drawing my interest, but also the fibers are keeping my eye moving around, and I'm really satisfied with my project, and I hope you're satisfied with yours. Have fun!